Loneliness isn't always a sign of failure, sometimes, it's the silence where truth speaks loudest. Imagine walking alone, not because you're unwanted, but because you've outgrown the noise. What if lacking friends isn't a curse, but a hidden Stoic signal pointing you toward inner strength, clarity, and unshakable peace? Imagine this: you walk into a room full of people, yet somehow, you still feel alone. Conversations swirl around you like waves, but none of them touch you. In that moment, a quiet thought creeps in: do I not belong here? Society has trained us to fear this feeling. We've been taught that having fewer friends means something is wrong with us. That if your phone doesn't light up with messages, your value dims. But what if this narrative is flawed? The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, saw solitude differently. To them, loneliness wasn't a disease to escape. It was a signal to decode. Seneca wrote, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." He understood that silence isn't empty. It's full of messages waiting to be heard. When you lack friends, modern psychology often points to social skills, extroversion, or belonging. But Stoicism asks a deeper question: what if this is your training ground? Imagine being left alone not because you're unworthy, but because life is removing the noise so you can finally hear your inner voice. In Stoic terms, loneliness isn't a punishment, it's a mirror. It shows you where your sense of self truly stands when the applause fades. Think of Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by thousands, yet he wrote nightly in his journal, facing himself in silence. He knew that crowds can distract, but solitude sharpens. So before you label the lack of friends as a flaw, pause. What if it's the beginning of your inner evolution? What if the silence you fear is the same silence the Stoics embraced as their greatest teacher? This is the first crack in the illusion, and through it, light begins to enter. Scroll through any social media feed, and you'll see it: smiling faces, crowded parties, endless squads. The message is subtle but powerful: the more friends you have, the more valuable you must be. Society glorifies numbers. Follower counts become a modern scoreboard. And if yours doesn't measure up, the whisper begins: you're falling behind. But what if this is all a mirage? The Stoics understood the danger of external illusions. Epictetus once said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about things." The problem isn't your lack of friends, it's the lens through which you interpret it. Today's world equates being surrounded with being fulfilled. Yet, how many of those connections are truly meaningful? How many are based on virtue, growth, and mutual respect, the Stoic foundations of real friendship? Often, what looks like belonging is merely noise dressed as connection. Imagine standing in a loud marketplace. Voices everywhere, chaos swirling. You can't even hear your own thoughts. That's what modern friendship culture can feel like: constant chatter with no depth. Seneca warned against chasing the crowd blindly. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. He didn't say as many people as possible. He said the right people. The Stoics believed that true strength doesn't come from being surrounded by multitudes, but from standing firm when the crowd moves in the wrong direction. This is the psychological trap. We measure ourselves by mirrors held up by others, instead of the quiet certainty within. When society shouts that your worth depends on your circle, the Stoic whispers back, your worth was never theirs to define. And here lies the cliffhanger: if the crowd's validation is an illusion, then what is real friendship? What standard should you measure by, if not numbers? Imagine having only one friend in the world, but that one friend sharpens your character like fire refines steel. No gossip. No competition. No masks. Just shared virtue and mutual growth. To the Stoics, friendship wasn't about proximity or popularity. It was about shared pursuit of the good. Seneca wrote, "Associate only with those who can make you a better man." This wasn't advice for introverts, it was a strategy for the wise. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by countless advisors and soldiers, often reflected on the few souls who truly elevated him. He didn't seek hundreds of companions, he sought a handful of truthful mirrors. Because for the Stoic, a friend is not a distraction from the path, they walk the path with you. Modern psychology calls this high-quality connections, bonds that increase your psychological resilience, provide authentic feedback, and align with your values. The Stoics practiced this long before science proved it. They didn't chase popularity, they cultivated selective loyalty. Think of Epictetus, born a slave, who found strength through the teachings of his mentor Musonius Rufus. That bond wasn't built on convenience but on shared philosophy. The Stoics knew that real friendship is rare, and precisely because it's rare, it's sacred. Now imagine the reverse, a circle of people who drain your clarity, flatter your ego, and mirror your flaws instead of challenging them. This is the danger Marcus warned against when he wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." The people you let in will eventually paint your inner world. So, what does this mean if you currently lack friends? It might mean that life is clearing space, not for more, but for better. For friendships that demand growth, not conformity. For conversations that sharpen, not dull. For bonds that stand in silence as powerfully as they do in speech. The Stoic redefinition of friendship flips the modern script. It's not about how many stand beside you, but who stands beside you when it matters. But here's the real question: what if solitude itself could prepare you to become the kind of person worthy of those rare, deep connections? Picture yourself standing on a quiet mountaintop. No friends. No chatter. Just the wind, your breath, and your thoughts echoing back at you. For most, this silence is uncomfortable. For the Stoic, this is where the real work begins. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily in solitude, not because he was lonely, but because he was training. Training to remain calm in chaos. Training to sharpen his mind against the whetstone of silence. He understood something modern society has forgotten: loneliness isn't always a void, sometimes it's a forge. In today's world, we run from quiet. We fill every gap with music, notifications, endless scrolling. We fear the stillness because it reflects us back to ourselves. But the Stoics embraced it. Seneca said, "Withdraw into yourself, as far as you can." He wasn't advocating isolation out of weakness, but solitude out of strength. Loneliness, when embraced, becomes a psychological gym. It teaches emotional regulation, self-awareness, and independence from external validation. Think of Epictetus, who lost everything: status, freedom, companionship, yet became unshakable. He learned to stand firm within, long before he stood firm without. Modern psychology confirms this: solitude, when chosen consciously, increases creativity, emotional clarity, and resilience. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths, but it also reveals the parts of you that were drowned out by the noise. Imagine removing the constant hum of social distraction. What thoughts would rise to the surface? What goals would finally become clear? What insecurities would you finally face? The Stoic uses this time not to escape the world, but to prepare for it. Loneliness becomes the arena where you build your inner fortress so that when the storms of life arrive, your peace remains unshaken. But here's the twist: this power only awakens when you stop running from the silence and start listening to it. Because the silence isn't empty. It's filled with instructions, waiting for you to hear them. And once you've been forged in that solitude, the question becomes, what kind of connections will you choose to let back in? Once you face the silence, a quiet strength begins to form within you. You no longer crave crowds to feel complete. And that's when something powerful happens: you stop collecting people and start choosing them. The Stoics were deliberate about their bonds. Seneca advised, "Ponder for a long time whether you shall admit a given person to your friendship, but when you have decided to do so, welcome him with all your heart." This wasn't coldness, it was clarity. To them, friendship wasn't a social accessory, it was a mutual journey toward virtue. Marcus Aurelius valued friends who reminded him of his principles, not his popularity. Epictetus sought companions who tested his ideas, not his patience. In a world obsessed with more followers, more likes, more acquaintances, Stoicism whispers, "Better a single wise friend than 1,000 empty faces." Think of this like cultivating a garden. You don't plant hundreds of seeds at random. You plant a few, carefully chosen, and you nurture them with intention. Over time, they grow deep roots. Real friendship is slow. It's built on consistency, shared values, and truth. When you choose a few and grow deep, you remove the pressure to perform. You stop pretending. You allow real conversations to unfold, the kind that challenge, heal, and sharpen. And ironically, it's only when you stop chasing everyone that the right ones finally stay. But this deliberate way of connecting isn't just about others, it's about who you become in the process. Which leads us to the final transformation, turning solitude itself into your greatest source of power. Solitude isn't the absence of connection. It's the presence of self. When the noise fades, when the friends are few or none, you're left with the only companion you'll ever truly have, your own mind. Marcus Aurelius found strength not in crowds, but in nightly reflections with his journal. Seneca wrote letters that shaped empires alone in his study. Epictetus forged unshakable resilience after losing everything. None of them ran from solitude. They mastered it. Modern culture teaches us to fear being alone, but Stoicism reframes it: solitude is liberation. It's the space where clarity grows, where your worth detaches from approval, and where friendships become choices, not crutches. So, if you find yourself with few friends, don't rush to fill the void. Listen to it. Train in it. Become strong through it. Because the lack of friends doesn't mean you're broken. It might mean you're on the path the Stoics once walked, the path toward inner freedom. And when you return from that silence, the connections you choose will not define you. You will define them. Bellhop Bell, subscribe for more Stoic psychological storytelling where ancient wisdom meets modern minds.